I'm personally excited to introduce you folks to today's guest speaker, Bryan Beecham. He is an Agile coach, a trainer, a developer, and a speaker with over 20 years of IT experience. His specialties include coaching teams, providing effective technical training, and facilitating Agile adoption. He is passionate about improving everyone's ability to design and produce excellent software. Bryan is also passionate about collaboration, extreme programming, discovering creative solutions, and helping teams succeed. Today, we're going to be hearing from Bryan. Over to you, Bryan.
Oh, thank you very much for the great intro. And thanks to AgileTO for having me here tonight. Talk about a subject that's near and dear to my heart, extreme programming. So I'm going to jump into it because this is essentially, I'm not going to be able to pull this off in 15 minutes right now. So I decided to just give you all of the value up front. And the big summary for this will be that there's a lot to XP, and you can't truly get it without doing it. You have to experience it firsthand to really understand the gist why some people are so excited about it and passionate about it. The real core of it is treating each other well. And we always look at working on getting technically better. It's every day, continuous improvement. And we look at simplicity as a discipline, meaning it's something we strive to always look for simple. How can we do the same thing simpler? Any task that we have, find a simpler way to do it is a better thing. So a little background for people who haven't heard of extreme programming. There's a lot of things in it. And this is from Kent Beck's book, Extreme Programming Explained, which is probably the best resource on this. And he talks about XPs. You're going to give up old, ineffective technical and social habits in favor of new ones that work. And you'll see some familiar things. I'm assuming that everyone on this call is probably familiar with the Agile Manifesto. And you'll notice as I go through this, how many things ring true, and maybe some things that you do in your everyday work. And you're like, oh yeah, we do that. And this is the roots. This is the core where this is coming from. You know, so many people who wrote the Agile Manifesto had an XP background. This is where they came from. So you'll see that core here. XP is fully appreciating yourself for total effort today. It's striving to do a better tomorrow. It's evaluating yourself by contribution to the team's shared goals. And it's asking to get some of your human needs met through software development. I said, well, that sounds pretty weird because, you know, I thought this was all about programming and that. The real thing we want to do with XP is we want to bring the business and the programming together. We want them to meet and be one cohesive group that works together. Now of this, there are three parts, which I'll be talking about today. There's the values, and there's the principles, and there's the practices. And the principles is what connects our values to our practices. I'm sure a lot of people have gone to stand-ups where you kind of go and it's the same thing every day. And you're like, why are we even having the stand-up? And you know, that's the practice that we're doing. But if we don't understand the principles or the values of it, then it feels very meaningless to us as we go through it. The core of the values from XP are communication, simplicity, feedback, courage, and respect. And again, this is a slide when I show people, they start looking at me like, am I in the wrong session? Because I thought this was all about programming again. You know, it's extreme programming. Isn't this about test-driven development and refactoring? Well, how come these are like listed as the values? This is the things that we feel are important. We feel these 5 things are the core for us being successful. Simplicity. We only want to do what is needed and what is asked for. We don't want to do any gold plating. We don't want to do anything extra than what we need, the minimal we need to do. We want to work in really small steps. And I think with all my experience, I think if I had to give somebody advice on how they should work in their team, I would say work in small steps, do really small things. And I'm going to come back to that a little later on the importance, why that's so important. And this is a question we ask, especially when we're teaching test-driven development. We say, well, what's the simplest thing that could possibly work? You know, how can we do, what's the next simplest thing? And then we ask again, what's the next simplest thing? And we slowly work in this way as we deliver our software. So with this, we're constantly striving for a simple design. When we look at the key parts of a simple design, like passing all tests, right? No duplication, expresses all intent. And then we want to minimize the amount of items that are being used. That's striving for the simple design. Communicate face-to-face daily. Well, this sounds familiar, doesn't it? Right? We work together on everything. The whole team works together to get it done. And this doesn't matter if it's necessarily the coding or maybe like working out the requirements, or there's no reason why we can't do all of that together. Instead of like dividing people up into individual tasks, XP really works at us all working together on solving the problem. The view is that all of us together is better than any of us alone. No matter how good that one developer can be on that team, or how strong a product owner that is that we have, there's no way that they can match up to being all together. Then we get the best of everybody. And then we're going to produce the best software. We're going to produce the best results. And that's our key to problem solving, is going to be communication. I'm sure everyone's familiar with how many times they've had, problems come up because of a lack of communication. And we often talk about the importance of transparency, right? That's improving our communication and an awareness of what's going on. Feedback. Now, when we work in these small little items, it allows us to get frequent feedback. We want to demonstrate our software in its working state often, so we can make sure we're building the right thing. We say we want to do the right thing, build the right thing, and do the right thing and do the thing right? And doing the right thing is up at this level. Like, is it even the right decision to make? Is this the right thing we should be building next? Right? And then on the lower level, concepts like our practices, like test-driven development, then we get into doing it right. We want to adapt our process to the project, not the project to the process. This often happens. I can go into almost any shop today that's, air quotes, agile, and they will say, here is a process. We are going to put this process throughout the whole organization. And that's not how a great project is successful. If you take your process and modify it the way the project is unfolding, you'll have much more success. So XP had that figured out long ago. Changes create the need for feedback too. The marketplace is going to change, our demands. What we thought now is not the same as in 2 months. And you look at the rate the technology changes. Our solutions move around considerably. And that's one of the whole purposes, the whole cornerstones of doing agile software development, is that we want to be able to leverage the fact that things are changing. We want to make our software so that it's flexible. It can change its shape. It's more like Play-Doh than it is a pile of rocks, right? Pile of rocks. Anyway, I gotta watch my time here before I tell too many stories. And it's important to remember that feedback comes in many forms, right? It's not just, we might have a failing test as one type of feedback. We might have pair programming, and my friend Dave might say to me, oh, Brian, look at that over here. I got a cool way to do that. Show me something new. So I get some feedback on an improved technique. And of course, the demo to our customer, right? And they'll say, oh, this is kind of what I asked for, but now that I see it, it's not really what I want. And we're like, okay, that's all right. We're okay with that. Courage. Now, this is another interesting one that you don't see in a lot of other places. Why would courage be an important value? And you got to think about it in the context that it's, and I think I was talking to some of the organizers beforehand, saying that they had speakers to talk about safety. So, well, that's a big word that gets thrown around a lot. But we have to have the courage to share information about timings, expectations. Hey, I'm not going to have that done this week, right? I have to have the courage that it's okay to say that. And hopefully we have a safe environment where I can do that too. And we're going to hit that on the next slide. But we don't document failures. Our plan is to succeed. We want to succeed going forward. So there's no point tracking when things aren't working. We don't fear, because we do our work together. So I don't have to worry about, oh, I'm not very good at this part. I don't want that person to find out. That doesn't exist in a good XP team. Everyone knows what everyone's ability is, and they know that they're trying their hardest. And we're accepting of changes as they arrive. So that works. You see how these start to work together. You say these are all kind of connected. With the feedback, if we're working in small pieces, keeping it simple, getting lots of feedback, we're very accepting of changes. We're not upset that changes come in. We're encouraged. We're like, that's great. You know, we're able to improve our software. And respect. This is underlying core value. You know, everyone contributes in some way to our success. The team respects the expertise of the customer, and the customer respects the expertise of the team. And everyone on the team is equally important. All right, I'm realizing this is only 15 minutes, so I'm not going to give you a full XP thing here, but I want to run over the concepts so that you're aware of them, and I'll be able to dig into some of them. Of humanity, economics, the concept of mutual benefit, self-similarity, improvement, diversity, reflection. These are the principles that we follow on an XP team. We also talk about flow, about creating opportunity, having redundancy, failure, quality, again, baby steps. Again, we're talking about the importance of these small steps and accepted responsibility for it. Here's a kind of look at all the different practices that we have. And you can see a lot of things on here. If we look at it, we'll see some things that we're familiar with, like, you know, Slack is not the tool Slack. It's what Slack is, but having a little bit of space in your day and your time. I talk to people all the time who have back-to-back meetings, sometimes back-to-back-to-back meetings. And you know, it's very difficult to adjust or to improve or make changes to your work in that situation. Very difficult to work less, to find a little bit of space, and that space gives us flexibility. But there's an awful lot on here. And we'll look at a couple of things on here too. I mean, things that others seem familiar is like incremental deployment, a daily deployment that we're doing. So let's look at a couple of these. We're sitting together as the whole team. Well, obviously we can't sit together right now, but we have a lot of good virtual tools that we can use to kind of be together still. And I encourage everyone that I work with to turn your camera on. Like, let's see your face. Let's kind of almost be sitting together still. Informative workplaces, a lot of electronic things are being used now. I'm a big fan. I've got paper all over my office here with sticky notes written on it. And work energized. After all these years of being a software developer, I learned an amazing trick from Ron Jeffries about a month ago. And what I learned was not to work so much. And you think, well, that sounds counterintuitive. But what it was is do a little bit of work and do it well, and then step away from the computer. And you can think about what you're going to do next and then come back at it. But we don't work when we're tired. Because when we work when we're tired, we create bugs like crazy. We create all kinds of problems. We make poor decisions, poor judgment. And you come back to the work with a fresh mind and we're like, oh no, what did I do all that for? Now I have to undo that. So it's a real trick to do good work in little increments and let them build on each other. Other practices, pair programming is one of the most famous ones coming from XP. Today, a lot of people do mob programming, which is an extension. And all the XPers I know are, well, not all, but most XPers I know are quite accepting of the mob programming. They love doing it. The stories we keep track of, and I mentioned about Slack already. Continuous integration is something that, although it's, you know, XP had been doing it for 20 years at this point, some teams still don't do it. They still don't regularly bring their code in and share it. The idea is that if I make a change in a small piece, as soon as I integrate it into our main code, everyone else can get that benefit and can get that change. There's all kinds of things like merges and other things become easier to do if we're continuously integrating in small little bits. Obvious test first programming is referring to TDD. And even our design is incremental. Our design will grow as we learn more about the product. You know, we have the moment of maximum ignorance is right at the start of the project. And that's where everyone always wants to know, how much is it going to cost? When is it going to be done? How many people do you need? How many servers should I set up? And it's like, okay, well, I just found out 5 minutes ago that I was even on this project. How could I possibly answer that, right? But tomorrow I'm going to know a lot more. And a month into programming, I'm going to know even more. So we get closer and closer to that horizon and predictability, right? We can't see beyond the horizon. Real customer involvement. What a difference this makes. You can actually get feedback from the person you're making your software for. It changes everything. It sounds obvious, doesn't it? Like, how could you work on software without the person you're building it for giving you feedback? It's mind-boggling, but we still try to work that way. We also have this concept of like shrinking teams, because a team can actually get smaller once it's up and running, once the project is up and running. Anyway, root cause analysis, everyone's probably pretty familiar with that, doing concepts like 5 whys and digging down into a problem. Other practices, we want to share the code. We want to have like a single code base. And I get in all kinds of arguments with people who want to have tons of branches. You want to minimize your number of branches, preferably down to just one, just the main branch. And that's what allows us to work so quickly, one of the reasons. There's a lot of cool concepts in here. Things like the concept of pay per use. Pay per use is setting up a system where people actually will pay for the software. If you think about it, when you buy an airline ticket, right, you pay as you use that service. So that can really help develop the software. So you kind of know whether it's working or not, whether it's priced right or not. A quick little thing here. Jeff's starting to give me the eye, so I'll hurry up. This is from Hockey Canada. I'm a big hockey fan, and I think hopefully some are. With any sport at all, though, right, we have this technical layer, and I'm not talking about watching it on TV. Maybe a lot of people watch basketball and watch the NCAA tournament that just happened. It's one thing to be able to watch it, but if you want to do it, you have to have a foundation of technical skills. There's a lot of companies that I go and work at, and they're doing Scrum or other concepts, and which involve maybe these team tactic levels or team play levels. And this is for like under 11 years old. What's the amount of ratio that it would be, and 50% of it is developing technical skills. So let's translate that into Agile years, right? It's similar. It's not like dog years at all, but Agile years, we would say maybe I've got 3 or 4 years experience, right? At that rate, our teams, their technical skills, 50% should be going into that if we were to follow this guide, right? But instead, we spend a lot of time teaching them all about strategy and team play and higher level concepts. So that's one shift I would like to see happen amongst teams, is to understand that we're not talking about it, we're not watching it, we are doing it. And if you are on that basketball court, you are on that hockey rink, you are on that baseball diamond, you need to know how to pass or throw or shoot. You have to understand these fundamentals. So the thing I like with XP is that it gives us all of this. It gives us a whole pyramid is provided for. Okay, so some further reading, because this was so brief. Extreme Programming Explained. Basically anything by Kent Beck. I will recommend all of his books. Extreme Programming Installed, Chet Hendrickson, Ron Jeffries. It's a great little book. And the other ones are Popular Agile Books. There's, I know this will be recorded, so you'll be able to get this link afterward. There's a really good read here on lessons learned by doing extreme programming, things that they've come to. And I think you'll find it exciting how similar it is to your experiences working in an agile environment. So again, back to my summary slide, there's a lot to XP, and you're gonna have to try it and to really get it. But respect is a key thing. We gotta respect each other well, treat each other well, and try to get technically better every day. And simplicity is a discipline. So make things as simple as you can. Oh, and that's the end of my slides.
Not bad, Brian. A little bit over the 15 minutes, but well worth it because there was a ton of information in there. Folks who have been to AgileTO QuickTalks before already apparently know that a great way to ask questions of Brian is to throw it in the chat window, because there are a few that have already come in. But before we get to those, I've got a couple just to get us started here, Brian. I'm sure that we'll get some more questions in a moment. But I noticed that a lot of the language you were using as you were talking through this presentation seemed to be similar words and phrases that appear in the Agile Manifesto. I'm wondering, why did XP steal all of these words from the Agile Manifesto?
Well, thanks, Jeff. As Dave Rooney has pointed out in their chat, that XP predates it, the manifesto, by about 5 years. And if we look at the signatories, when the manifesto was written and all the people got brought in, I don't know what the percentage would be, but we're probably looking at north of half of the people involved in the writing of it were from an XP background. And there's some people, obviously, like we had Crystal and we had Scrum and we had different thoughts coming together and to discuss, hey, all these people with light methodologies, what's working for you? And XP is a light methodology. It sounds like there's a lot of stuff to it there, but it's only because it covers that whole pyramid that I showed you. And you can take a couple aspects of XP and get value out of it. It's just there's a synergy that starts to happen, that when you start doing like test-driven development and refactoring and your pair programming, all of a sudden it starts to magnify, starts to multiply how the improvements, how much it can improve. Your improvements multiply. There you go.
So you touched on something in your answer there, which is actually a question that showed up in the chat earlier as well, from a couple of people actually, and they're talking specifically about the idea of working together on everything. That seems really inefficient. We've built software engineering teams in the past where the analyst will go and do the analysis work and hand it off to the developer, who will hand it off to the tester, so that the developer can start working on the next thing. And you're suggesting that seems to not be aligned with this XP approach.
Well, it's just it's an ineffective way to work, having people split up and then bring together. So if I start working on something, and then I need to get some help on it, I'll go interrupt you who are working on something, and I got to come back, and this builds and builds, and it initially you say, well, that doesn't seem like too bad. But once we start magnified across an organization to realize that, well, I have to go talk to that other department, and I have things half done, and then we start building dependencies on each other, we start getting more and more churn that starts to happen. It's like a car spinning its tires in the winter streets of, well, not Toronto, because it never really gets that snowy down there, does it? Sorry, I had to take a shot. But it's like a tire spinning in the snow, right? We're not getting any traction. We're just going to stay there and spin, and we're expending gas and effort. We're saying, look, we're trying really hard, and they are, and I feel bad for the drivers, but if they put winter tires on, it would change everything.
Only an Ottawa person would diss Toronto for not getting enough snow.
All right. So before we go down that road, let's
I'll avoid that one.
Yeah, let's avoid that topic. We know which city's better. How about, Brian, the opportunity, because XP seems to be advocating a lot of great practices, a lot of great values in here, and yet frameworks and other methods like Scrum, which comes to mind, and even Kanban seem to be the popular things that everyone talks about. Why aren't more people talking about XP?
I don't know if people listening to me. I don't know, because I sure talk about it a lot. Scrum has been very popularized, and there's probably a lot of reasons for that. Some is a certification system, which is an aspect of it. There's no XP certification, and it seems a strange thing, but actually having people were able to get it to go on courses to say, I want to get certified in this, so it shows that there was training. So that concept had value to a lot of companies. But the most successful companies I've seen using Scrum use Scrum and XP, because Scrum doesn't have the that whole pyramid. They don't offer the engineering practices. They never said that they did, right? It's not designed to be that. and it can be used very well. I have no beef against Scrum or Kanban or any system people want. I just want everyone to remember that these are not be all end all. These are tools. These are concepts that you can use to make your work go better. I think we have a question from Dave Rooney in Ottawa, Ontario.
Well, there was one actually from Todd building on top of that one that talks about XP and DevOps. Let me just jump there because that's another buzzword that jumps in before we get to Mr. Rooney.
Okay. So, I mean, yeah, DevOps is also, that's a very new thing in the last 5 years. We've got into the DevOps, which is we're actually taking our operations group and working with the development group. It builds off of what we're doing in XP though, which is that continuous integration. And we have a continuous integration. They say, well, maybe we can go to, move right to continuous deployment, right? And we're actually putting software, and more tech companies, we hear some crazy numbers about how many times, even a super large company is deploying to production, a second. And software's changed from being like, you would take 6 months to write software, in some cases longer. And now you're getting updates all the time. I mean, I'm sure everyone on this call has a mobile phone and is constantly getting updates to it. So, if you talk about doing DevOps well, you don't have a choice of, it's assumed that you're being agile. You have to work in this way in order to get the flexibility to deliver software quickly.
Let me just change subjects a little bit. You know what, Dave, did you have a question that you wanted to jump in with?
Oh, I was just going to tack on to Brian's thing about Scrum and saying that XP really is a superset of Scrum. A lot of the Scrum practices are there with slightly different names, iterations instead of sprints. And we did do stand-ups 20 years ago, but we also did release planning, iteration planning, like sprint planning and such. So it really is. It is a superset, and I think Kent Beck has said he just unabashedly stole from Scrum when he created XP.
Nice.
Well, that's the whole idea, is that using tools that work, right? These are the tools. It's like, yeah, I need a screwdriver in this situation. So then don't use a hammer, right? Like, use a screwdriver, but it's good to be informed and be aware of what's available to you.
I want to jump back a little bit. There was a question that I missed earlier that I think is worth touching on when we talked about working together on everything and not interrupting each other. There's also the nature, though, of sometimes when we work in software development, we work with, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but like some people in software development are a little bit more on the introverted side. They tend to like to work on their own. They want to put headphones on and do their own type of thing. How do you engage people on different levels of that spectrum when some people just want to do their own thing and don't really want to work with others on stuff?
I mean, to me, the right solution is a solution that works for the team. As a hockey coach, I constantly see other coaches who apply a system to whatever team they have. They have fast skaters, slow skaters, varying skill levels of kids, and then we'll give them the exact same system to work with. I see the same thing in organizations with people going in and, Scrum masters and agile coaches saying, this is the way to do it. I don't believe this is the way. And if you look at it from XP, and maybe that's because that's my background philosophy is from XP, is that we change our process to match the project. And part of that is the people that are involved on it. So in your situation, I'd say, well, maybe we don't mob program all day long. Maybe that would just be too hard on some of the members of our team. So maybe we go, we're going to do 2 hours in the morning and an hour in the afternoon, or what can they handle? What do they want? Maybe they'll do it for a while and start to go, hey, I don't mind being in close contact with this group as long as I get some space, over here. Like I don't want to have lunch with you guys if I have to like mob with you in the morning. But the biggest thing is back to, again, communication. Again, we have to talk to our team and find out, what do they like? What makes it tick? Like, software development is actually fun. I think people lost that somewhere along the way. Like, I have a great time coding. I was coding this morning. And I was telling, I don't know if you were on there on the call, but I think you were I was talking with Jeff earlier today, and I was saying I have my retirement plan figured out. I'm going to code in the morning. I'm going to blacksmith in the afternoon. I'm going to play guitar at night. Right. And I thought, like, I got it. I'm very, very happy person, but coding is fun, and coding with others for me, I mean, I am an extrovert, but coding with others is even more fun. But I try to respect that they need their space sometimes, and who are they and what do they want out of this relationship.
I'd love to. We're a little bit over time, but I hope that's okay. If anyone has to go, by all means, feel free to drop off. There is a link posted in the chat window that gives you an opportunity to provide some feedback on this session and what you'd like to see from some others. So please take a moment to click that link before you do have to leave. But Bryan, I got a couple more questions if you're good to stick around for another minute or two.
Yep.
Wonderful. And that was something that you said right off the bat when you talked about the importance of simplicity. And that seems really important for somebody like me who likes to do as little work as possible. That seems like a pretty good thing. Can you maybe expand on what you mean by simplicity a little bit more?
Absolutely. And you know, I like to say simplicity is a discipline, because it's something we have to learn how to get better at it. It's not out of the box. I'm going to make this really simple. Like in code itself, simple design takes years of experience to make a good simple design. But we don't, you know, you just make the simplest one you can with what you know. Um, but it's something we strive for, because every change we have to make, the simpler my design is, the easier my change. So if you have a product owner, if you're being asked for, we need these features faster, it's like, well, let us simplify the design then, because then we'll put it in a state where we can deliver features to you quicker. And we want
That
to
makes
get,
a lot of sense. That makes a
and
lot of sense. I
as
think
far as doing less, things, I mean, we want to have the less amount of work for future us, right? Like when I code, I think about future Bryan. Future Bryan's going to come in there and he's going to have to like find the bug, or he's going to have to add a new feature. If people like the software, it's going to grow and change. So I want to make it as easy for future Bryan as I can.
How do you make it easier for future Bryan when future Bryan is working on a team that has dependencies across 5 other teams that maybe aren't adhering to some of these practices, that are really struggling, and you know, they've got long living branches, and I'd love to talk about branching with you, but I think that's a completely separate conversation. Um, but you know, we've got these other teams that are working in different ways. How do we overcome the sheer overhead of meetings and coordination required to connect with these other teams?
It's like a USB adapter. When you've gone, you know, we've shifted to a USB-C, for example, right? But the other group is still running on USB-A. So if they went to USB-C, things would be wonderful. That would be fantastic. But in the short term, we're going to have to use an adapter. We're going to have to like have a inefficient connection uh, between us and them. But we're going to be aware of it. And we're going to talk to them, and we're going to try to get them that interaction happening. Now, this, don't want to take this the wrong way, but if we can sever dependencies, that's even better. You know, if we can say, hey, look, what if we gave you some of this work and we took some of that work? Can we work independently? And you know, for example, like if we look at our screen, maybe we have the panel across the top, and one group can work on that, and we'll work on the main screen. Another group will work on the chat. That means if they have an upgrade to the chat, they can just push that code. They can put that live and independent of us. So even though we're working on the exact same object, we've managed to split it into 3 parts. So there's
That's
little tricks
fascinating.
and stuff like that that you can do. That I mean, that's all about how can we move faster, right? And
That's
faster is our third thing we want to do. The first thing we want to do is make it work, then make it right, and then make it fast. Okay, so it's very important to keep that in mind, and that's something a senior dev might say to a junior dev who's like, "Okay, it's working, push it." And it's like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, hang on. There's a reason we want to put it in this other state, and you'll thank me later."
that makes a lot of sense. I'm reminded of a talk another coach gave at a number of conferences, and it was if your team is an object, what's its API? and it was all about the interaction between teams. But I like your talk about how might we be able to sever some of those dependencies so that we can reduce some of that overhead. That's great.
And that works so on a communication level, those dependencies happen too. A lot of companies I've worked with, they have people in other parts of the world in different time zones. And that can have a huge impact on doing things and cause delays. Like I send an email, overseas, and I got to wait for that email to come back, but oh, it's already past Friday night there, so I'm going to have to wait till Monday morning. And if we can divvy up the work somehow, so that the people in a different time zone can work in a different on a different thing than us, and then we can. It's all about efficiency, right? The less dependencies I have on our work, how long does it take for someone to say thank you, right? I want to improve that ratio. For
That
someone to say,
sounds
oh, thanks for the code. Here's my feedback on it. I want to shorten that time.
That sounds like an awesome approach and an awesome philosophy to go into this with. And I think that would be something that could help a lot of us out. Bryan, if folks want to get in touch with you, what's the easiest way for them to find you?
I'm on LinkedIn would be one, and I'm also on Twitter. I use a handle Billy Garnett on Twitter, and that's just from playing guitar years ago. There's a whole long story with that. And those are probably the two simplest ways.
Okay.
I have my email. I provided my email address up there as well. So
It's
that's
Bryan with a Y. That's
it's
important.
Bryan with a Y. Yes. So
Excellent.
the intro slide, I think, had contact information on it.
That's great. Listen, really appreciate the conversation and the intro to XP tonight. I think that was a fantastic high-level overview. I know I really constrained you with time on this one, but you got through some great points and gave us some great places to go to get more information. So thanks a lot for that. And